There's LAPD officers at the scene now. We've been communicating via text message when they can, and some
call coming in, guys.
Also trying to reach out. I talked about that full mobilization, Christine. The A shift, 12 hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then the B shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and on it goes.
Hey, buddy.
No one has been relieved. We are
how's it going? It's going okay. It's going okay.
And no officers have been relieved. On the contrary,
I
the
decided
B
to give you a call in. I mean, I know.
So you have
still trying to get some more viewers on, but I just wanted to give you a little insight on what appears to be happening in LA right now, given the curfew in place and the actions the officers are taking.
Until a group started
let me turn down the volume on the stream. So what's your feedback in regards to what's going on? You just said that the curfew is going. Well, they just announced that the curfew is going to go in effect 45 minutes from now. So what's your feedback?
Yeah, I would assume 8 p.m. Pacific time. Before night falls.
How do you move all these cars? That might take a minute.
What time is it there for you right now?
On the street there, you can
for me, it is 9:20, so I'm on Central Time. You're on Eastern Time, 10:20. So for me, they're just about an hour behind me and 2 hours. 2 hours behind me and 3 hours behind you.
Right. So you get to experience it. How close is it? How close is it to you?
Oh, we're across the country. I'm still Middle America, so Cali is still a ways away from me.
Man, it's just been going crazy last couple of days, right? Because I was actually working on a couple of stream talking about narcissism, and when this went in effect, I was like, hey, I'm going to just jump on this and start doing a stream about this. And the first day I did a 5-hour stream. I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't get to see it yet. I've had some things going on. We're not live yet. You haven't connected me to a live call yet, right?
Yeah, I think you should be on the live call. I'm hearing you. Hold on. Let me.
Okay, no, that's not a problem.
Giving us the other perspective of people on the streets.
What I'm noticing here,
you're on the live call.
A crowd of people packing.
All right, perfect. All right, well let's get into what's going on here in LA right now, and then we can have a follow-up call.
Looks like LAPD is
be on the
now
stream.
have to help.
Yeah, let me turn down the audio on this stream a little bit more,
that curfew hitting in about
just slightly, so we can talk over it and it's not too disruptive. Yeah, so give me your perspective. Give me your perspective.
Right now,
well, honestly, I think this was bound to happen. We have been at a very weird place in this country for a while, and I think following this most recent election, no one really knew what would happen. We were kind of told in very vague terms what the plan was for the country moving forward from Donald Trump, and you have two sides that are looking at it from two different viewpoints. And I think right now what we're seeing is the actions of what was promised. Now, whether it's being affected in an efficient manner, obviously that's left to be seen. No one likes change, and the overall message from the president in the beginning of the year was obviously tackling some immigration issues. But as we've seen over the last few days, the way that it's being handled and the way that law enforcement across the country have been given directives to handle it, more specifically ICE, hasn't been the way that most people thought that it would happen. So, we're looking at video footage over the last few days of people being arrested at work, people afraid to pick up their kids at school, farm workers, laborers, at a glance, and we can only make our own assumptions, but at a glance, it seems like the immigration efforts to remove anyone that has criminal violations, or at least serious criminal violations in this country that are here illegally, are not necessarily the primary focus or the target of these ICE raids. What's happened is you have regular, everyday working class citizens that are being kind of pulled into that immigration effort, and so this is the backlash and the result of poor planning poor execution, and just, probably bad information or bad data in terms of how the whole immigration issue is being handled. I don't think anybody in this country doesn't align with the view that we do need to get a handle on immigration, but it depends on who you ask. This is a country and a land of immigrants. Myself, I'm an immigrant. My parents came here and migrated from tiny island of Jamaica, and as a benefactor of them being citizens, I was automatically granted a citizenship. So, there are people that come to this country for a better way of life, a better opportunity, the American dream. And then there are people there are people that also come to this country to take advantage of the freedoms and the liberties, and they don't necessarily always take the same approach as the hardworking foreigners and immigrants that come to this country. So I do understand there's a need for a curb in immigration, but obviously we've been battling this for many, many years now, and this is definitely not the right approach. So that's my thought on the immigration side of things, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone truly knows what the answer is, because this has been an ongoing issue for for as long as this country's been has been around. So it's going to take a collaborative effort, and as long as we are divided, which the only thing these laws and these executions of these raids are creating is just more division. And so we're never going to get to the bottom line issue of trying to figure out how we can keep our country safe collectively for everyone who's here trying to do the right thing, versus the people who are, of course, the minority, a very limited amount of people who are here taking advantage of the system, whether they're immigrants or not.
Right. And I have a couple of thoughts in regards to this. So when Biden was in power, and they had open borders and catch and release, and just everybody was just coming in, obviously we see that a lot of gang members did come in because they took over apartment complexes, held people at gunpoint, assaulted young girls, leave them in the ditch unalived, and not just girls, they were doing it to boys too, trafficking them, and there was a whole lot going on, and that caused the entire society in America, the ones that actually felt away. Even myself, I was a bit incensed by what was going on, because I was like, this is not right. And then with the other agendas, as we know, those are other agendas that were being touted and pushed on us that we didn't like, and we were forced to do certain things. Now, that exasperated the entire nations that were more conservative, like people like you and I that are more conservative. But I also have another spin on it. So with all these people that were coming in, we know that, even though it's the same bird, left wing, right wing, Democrat, Republican, it's the same bird, right? But when so many people came in, they were supposed to be giving the Democrats the power, the upper hand, and things didn't fall through as planned. And now, with the advent of AI and the robots, not just the robot dogs, but the robots that they're using for construction, the robots that they're using in the stores, all of this is happening. My thoughts are they need to get rid of as many people as possible, because when the robots are really deployed and they're taking over jobs, people are going to go in a frenzy trying to find jobs, and then they're going to be robbing and stealing and pillaging and plundering, because they're going to want work, and the robots are going to be taking over the jobs. And so they need to get rid of as many people as possible as a preemptive position to make sure that they can have a handle on it when this does go in full effect, I think over the next 1, 2, 3 years, because as you know, you go inside the restaurants, robots are doing some of the jobs. Robots are stocking the shelves. Robots are making your burger in certain fast food places that you go. So that's another position I think is why they need to get rid of as many people as possible, because it's not just the ones that they said they were going to snatch up and get rid of. they're doing it to everybody.
Well, while I don't disagree wholeheartedly with your position, I think that we're, in talking about, let's just say AI for a minute in terms of, job creation and job loss. We're more than 2 or 3 years from those technological advancements moving us forward in a direction where robots can take over human jobs, right? I think AI has its purpose, but I do think we're probably about a decade or two away from where you will see robots in mass, right? Because the technology is there, but they're very expensive to mass produce. So in mass, you're not going to have robots taking over jobs for farmers, laborers. We're just not there yet. Will we get there? Eventually, of course. It's the evolution of time, the evolution of man. We've always evolved, and we've always made things, more accessible, easier, and better. And so in due time, we will eventually get to a place where I believe that technology and the advancements we've made will, at a steady pace, start to surpass some of the jobs in the labor force. But in this particular instance, where we're talking about farmers and restaurant workers and just foreigners that come in and do the laborious tasks that not everyone in this country would like to do. The reality is you don't have a line at Chipotle during the hiring phase of people wanting to get behind that counter and become servers or cooks. Sure. You don't have a line of people at farm, at the farms out in California waiting to go out and pick strawberries. Because if anybody has ever done any immense amount of labor that required any type of physical interaction, you understand it's a very, very difficult job. And so, yes. This country, it wasn't really built on that foundation. We're in a democratic society where we have all this technology at our hands, and we're lucky to have it. But I think we're a ways away from there. I think to get back to the point about why we are where we are is not necessarily what the agenda may be. Short term, long, but we're talking more of a long term effect. But I think in the short term, what we're seeing with what's going on in the country right now, it has nothing to do with the agenda of getting rid of people because we have to prepare for a takeover with technology and jobs. I think this is a fundamental breakdown in government policy and efficiency where essentially President Donald Trump is trying to make good on his promises for immigration. If you remember in his first 4 years, the first thing that he really pushed and got a lot of backlash for was the wall, right? So we spent, billions upon billions of dollars on this wall, hoping that the wall would be a deterrent. And in fact, if you've looked on YouTube or you've just done a generic search, people have found a way to get over that wall. And there are people that are still being transported into this country through underground tunnels. It's really about how much money you have. If you're living in, let's just say Mexico, for instance, and you have the right connections, the right people, think about what Pablo Escobar was able to do with these underground tunnels and the amount of times that he in prison. So there are underground networks. There are, things on the black market where if you want to get into this country, especially from, a country that's low-lying and really close to the U.S., it's not very difficult. That's just the reality of it. And no wall or anything like that is going to really stop that problem. But the reason we're here now is because of the inadequacies of government. It's about what's going on the streets of LA right now, where in turn it has nothing to do with the people that are being affected by it, but it has everything to do with the policies that are in place and the people that put those policies in place. Right? Because Donald Trump right now, I think they're probably winding down on that parade, that military parade. But Donald Trump is not. He's not leading this charge. He may have signed some executive orders, and he may be making some calls, but ultimately he's not the enforcer. Right?
No, it's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious based on certain elements that I've noticed that to your point, to your position, he's not the one leading the charge. Actually, what's his name? Miller. I forgot his first name. He's
Correct.
the one.
Yeah.
Huh? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you're correct. Miller is the one leading the charge on this entire initiative. Is he the right person for the job? Probably not. Based on the way that this has been deployed, it's clearly not the way. I recently saw an excerpt earlier this afternoon where, and I'm not sure if it was true or not, but it was on a major television network where Trump made some statements about asking ICE to, kind of back down on some of the raids when it came to restaurants, hotels, and farms. Now, whether that's true or not, of course, we live in a society where information travels quickly, and it's a benefit, and sometimes it's not, because we are not 100% sure if that information is true. Now, if it is true, what it does is it lends credit to what we're discussing and the fact that the president really is not in control of the overall initiative. Now, he does have a responsibility to take a look at what we can all see, and he has the ability to make the calls that he needs to be able to kind of bring this to a halt and figure out next moves, because we're talking about 2,000 plus protests that are currently going on across the entire United States, across the nation, right? We've lost 2 politicians today due to gun violence in Minnesota. And so this is going to continue to escalate unless we find some type of a resolve, or unless the president does his job, right? His job is to lead. And in order for him to lead, he's going to have to look at the totality of the circumstances that he's created by allowing these agencies to start enforcing immigration, which clearly they're not doing it in a responsible manner. And so I think that's what we're looking at now with these protests. Now let's talk about the protests for a minute, because I think we're coming up on I think it was about 45 minutes. We're coming up on about 24 minutes or so before curfew goes into effect. And if you're watching the screen on your stream from Fox right now, there were cars doing donuts in the streets and things like that. Right. And so what we have to really think about and focus on is, and I'm speaking from a position of being a 20-year law enforcement veteran. I've been on both sides. I've been on the law enforcement side, and obviously as a citizen of this country and someone that has a family that I go home to every day, I've always made it a point where I'm not making justifications for the actions of law enforcement officers or military personnel, because they're following orders. I can tell you what's going on right now is that law enforcement is currently trying to get people off of the streets before the curfew goes into effect, because a lot of bad things happen in the dark. And so what they're looking to do is preserve life and property. There's business owners that have businesses on, out there in LA on these strips and in these neighborhoods and in these communities that are clearly being affected by the immigration status and by these, these protests. But those people don't have anything to do with what's going on with the country. And so law enforcement's sole duty is to preserve peace. And so you can express your First Amendment right if you're doing it peacefully and without violence. And as long as you're not breaking any laws that infringe upon other people's rights who may not necessarily be a part of the protest, then it's not a problem. The issue that we run into is that you do have agitators among these protesters. So 99% of the protesters are peacefully assembling and trying to protest. But you're always going to have those agitators in the group that are going to, start to create chaos, and they have their own agenda. And law enforcement does have a duty to protect even the protesters that have nothing to do with the bad actors that are there. And so the reason why, things are ramping up as we get closer to a close of tonight is because the last thing a law enforcement officer wants to do is be out there in the dark at night trying to maintain and preserve peace when you have bad actors. Because at nighttime now, under the concealment of dark, is when these bad actors, whatever their agenda is, whatever groups they belong to, that's when they're going to come out. And so even something as simple as, doing donuts in the street, what it does is it just creates a scenario where bad things can happen.
People like these are anarchists.
Exactly. And they thrive on this. And so they infringe upon the First Amendment rights of the people who truly are exercising their First Amendment rights. And unfortunately, it puts law enforcement in a very precarious
position.
It does. 100%, because you're trying now to preserve and protect not only life and property, but you have to now protect the people who did exercise their First Amendment rights to come out and peacefully protest. And there's just too many accounts and too many times where people have gone out to exercise their right and they either get hurt, they get injured, or worse, they lose their lives because they're so controlled. And so, everybody's on high alert. Everybody's tensions and emotions are at an all-time high. And when things start to go bad, it's a domino effect. And so what law enforcement's job is right now, as I can see on camera, is to try to preserve and protect that and get as many people as they can off the street before that curfew goes into effect. Because I did the job for a very long time. I can't tell you of a time where I remember a law enforcement officer being happy to arrest someone due to their conduct or misconduct while they were exercising their First Amendment rights. It's just not something that we want to do. In law enforcement, we're human as well. We're human beings doing the job, but at the end of the day, we still do have to protect the other people that are out there trying to exercise their rights. And so it's not a pretty sight. It's not something pretty to see, but just the overall tone and the climate of what's going on sets the tone for what we likely will have to endure in this country for the next several months, unless Donald Trump steps up as president and chief of this country and actually makes a stand and say, hey, listen, I do want, to continue with my plan for immigration, and I do want to get these bad actors off the street, but at the same time, I also want to make sure that I'm protecting the citizens of this country who have the right to assemble and protest peacefully. And that's one of the reasons why people come to this country, is because this is the home of the free. This is where
land of the free, the home of the brave.
So it's a very tough situation. It's very sad to see that we've gotten to this point in our country. But again, this is a reaction to the actions that were taken based on a political agenda that many people didn't agree with in the first place. And rather than taking the proper procedural steps to try to find a responsible way to address the immigration issue that we have in this country, this is the outcome. Because we do have an immigration problem in this country, and the immigration problem doesn't stem from the people that unfortunately come to the country illegally, right? They entered into the country through illegal means, and we just say that because they didn't go through the proper channels as everyone else. But we're really focused on the bad actors, because the average American, the average American knows that it's the immigrants that come to this country that make this country a better place. It's the fabric of this country, and those are the people that take on the jobs and do the things that average Americans don't want to do. I've never seen, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but I've never seen a Caucasian or just an Anglo-white American out in a strawberry field picking strawberries. I've never seen a black American out in a strawberry field. It doesn't happen. It's always going to be the immigrants that come into this country, and a lot of it has nothing to do with the fact that they're immigrants, but it has everything to do with their culture. Farming is a big thing in some of these countries where these immigrants migrate from to come to the U.S. to look for work to better support their families. And unfortunately, we don't have programs in this country anymore that promote farming. If you go back 2 decades ago, New York was one of the larger states that produced a lot of our produce. A lot of the apples, the Washington apples and things like that coming out of New York, those farms were always fielded and worked by migrant workers. It was not your average American-born citizen out of New York working these farms. And so, our food supply is going to be affected. A lot of different things are going to be affected because of these immigration laws that they're not putting into effect and enforcing. And I don't think that most people understand the repercussion of that, because, like I said, I have never seen, and maybe I'm biased, I'm just going based on my experience, I've never seen anyone outside of someone of a Hispanic origin or what we call a migrant worker out in those fields doing the work. I've never seen it.
That's true. We're a nation of consumers primarily, and not laborers. We've gotten so comfortable with just being consumers and getting what we want, and being that we've gotten comfortable with just being able to go to the store and buy what we want, we don't really think about where did it come from, who picked them, who packaged them. We just say we'll go to the store. Like I was having a conversation with someone, and it was like, man, I need to go pick some mangoes off the tree. And I said, mango? You pick mangoes off the tree? I'm like, yes, I pick mangoes off the tree. It's like, no, you just go to the store and buy mangoes. I was like, really? You don't know that someone has to pick the mangoes off the tree? And she's like,
someone
no.
has to pick those mangoes. You know, someone has to pick those avocados. Someone has to pick those jalapenos. Someone has to pick those tomatoes. Someone has to pick those bananas. And we're just not at a place yet. Like I said, we're probably about 2 decades away from that, where everything is automated and a machine can go out there and do the laborious task that has traditionally been done by farm workers who just so happen to be immigrants that come into this country looking for work and a better life.
Hold on, you said 2 decades?
Yeah, it's 2 decades. It's probably going to take about 20 years or so before we get to a point where we have everything on an autonomous base where you can rely on it. Right now, we're just we're still scratching the surface.
Yeah.
AI. Like,
hold on.
We've had technology to think about.
Hold on, I agree with you. We're in an infancy stage with AI, but
100%.
They're fast pacing it right now. So that's why in this big beautiful bill, they're making sure that the states have no control over what the deployment of AI. The federal government wants to be the only one that can say yay or nay. I don't think it's going to take 2 decades. I think, excuse me, I think max it's going to take about 5 to 10 years, maybe half a decade to a decade, but not 2 decades, because they're fast pacing it right now. I think I was watching something on the news a few days ago. In China, they already have robots out on the beat with police officers, machine learning AI robots that's learning how to police so they can put them out there by themselves. And they're talking about this is supposed to be rolling out within the next 2-3 years, where they have a squad of robot police going out there by themselves, where they don't need any human assistance. And we already know about Optimus, which is Tesla's robot. There's another company, I think it's called, I forgot the name of it, where it's lifelike robots. I forgot the name of it, but go ahead.
You may be referring to Boston Dynamics.
No.
Now,
but continue.
Okay.
Continue.
Well, what I was going to say about Boston Dynamics, right? Boston Dynamics, they've been around since 1992. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they have made the most strides in the robotics industry than any other company in the space, right? They're the loss leader in the space. They have made the most advancements, the most technological enhancements, and even with Boston Robotics, right? We're going back from 1992. We're in 2024 now. It's taken them over 2 decades, and they still don't have a perfected product in the robotics space, which is their niche.
But Tesla has
a perfected product.
But Tesla has Optimus, and Optimus is far more advanced than Boston Dynamics. It moves more human-like.
Right, but moving more human-like doesn't mean that it's more efficient, right? So you can look at Tesla and the advancements they've made, and I'm not taking a knock on Tesla, because they obviously are going to be the loss leader in technology for the world as we know it currently. But when you look at a company like Boston Dynamics, who that is their primary sector that they have been in since 1992, and the advancements that they've made, I'm sure there's some bleed over from the white sheets and the white papers that Tesla has studied on the things that they've done. But even with that, there is no rapid deployment of technological advancements that are going to replace a human being within the next 3 to 5 years. We'll have prototypes, we'll have models, but in order for us to get to a space where it's perfected, I mean, think about the airplane. we're still trying to push the limits on technology with airplanes.
That's
We've
true.
been flying for a very long time. So to think that we're going to get to a space where AI, technology, and robots are going to take over and going to make a major impact in the job force, we can see it on, on a very minute scale. You talk about China, we're decades behind China. Right now you can go to the grocery store in China and scan your palm because you're in a registered database system that has validated and verified who you are. You don't need to take a debit card, a credit card, or a phone to tap on anything in a grocery store in China today.
Yeah.
But we're nowhere near that here in the U.S.
Yeah, and to add to that, I have a buddy that came over from China, and we were having a conversation. And he said when he visited China, and he wanted their version of Uber, right? And he wanted to get, he didn't have to pull out his phone and tap anything. He just go out, and what he said, he went out and said, I don't know how they say taxi or whatever, but he just went out, and there's like on the road, there's like a stand, and he just spoke into it, and the Uber came, and he was explaining that when he went to the rent-a-car place to rent a car, he didn't need, because he was in the database system, he didn't need to pull out any identification. As soon as he walked into the rent-a-car place, because he made his reservation online, they already had the car ready for him, and they just gave him the keys.
Yeah, but again, it speaks volumes to the conversation. Kind of diverting away from where we are now in this country. But like I said, if you go back, we're almost a decade behind China. China's first grocery store that was automated, right? Cashless, cashierless grocery stores. China launched that in 2016. It's 2025. That's 9 years. They launched that 9 years ago. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we finally just got a automated checkout grocery store, which is down in downtown Tulsa in the BOK Center, in the BOK building. And they just opened that not even a year ago. China's been doing this for almost a decade before us. So the technological advancements that we're seeing on the consumer side are just now starting to hit the U.S. Now, the one thing that I will say with the U.S. is we invest heavily into our military. And so while we may have the world's most technologically advanced military set, we just don't have that yet for the consumer side, which involves our day-to-day lives.
That's true.
We've invested heavily in the military so that we can protect this country, but we haven't done the same when it comes to replacing individuals when it comes to jobs. So when you start talking about this immigration initiative that we're pushing forward, and now we can see within just a matter of months after its implementation that we're effectively now ripping families apart and taking parents from their children and vice versa because they got it wrong. They're looking at criminal records and violations, but just because you got a speeding ticket or you got arrested because you got too many speeding tickets and you became a habitual traffic offender due to that makes you a felon. That doesn't mean you deserve to be deported from this country because you're an immigrant. You didn't break any violent laws. The whole premise of Donald Trump's approach towards this immigration initiative was violent criminal offenders, getting rid of gang members, getting rid of which I think most people agreed with for the safety and preservation of our country. But at this moment in time that we're living in right now, these immigration effects are not just affecting the initial or the intended target, it's affecting everyday Americans. And like we just said a few minutes ago, who's going to go out there and pick those oranges? Who's going to go out there and pick the strawberries? Because it wasn't the gang leaders in the from the beginning, from the onset. It's not those people that were out there doing these tasks and doing the work that regular everyday Americans don't want to do.
100%.
So they got it wrong. They got it wrong, and that's the reality of it. We have to start looking at and I don't mean to cut you off. Let me finish this one thought. We have to start looking at things from a very logical perspective. And somehow we sometimes lose sense of common sense. And common sense tells me, just looking at what is going on in this country right now, is that we got it wrong. Because gang members and gang leaders are not going to be out protesting about you being deported from this country. The people that are out protesting and the people that are pissed off are the hardworking immigrant, family members of immigrant workers and immigrants and migrants themselves that are here making this country a better place. It's not the people that are here committing illicit acts. And so the government needs to go back and fix this. They have to figure it out.
100%. And what's crazy too is that they are also arresting politicians, right? Because some of the people from Congress and I think the Senate wants to go in and do oversight, and they're arresting them, throwing them down to the ground, and it just making it worse, exacerbating the whole deployment into the direction that could potentially cause a civil war. Because people have.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that we're at the helm of a civil war. I think that it could eventually grow into that based on public perception and the view from American citizens. But right now, the reality is we live in a country where we have lost sight of civility, right? And the people that are currently out protesting right now, majority are immigrants. They are people that came to this country that maybe obviously are legal. They did it the right way, and what they're doing is protesting for the rights of the people that are trying to do what they did, to come here and contribute to this country. So unless you have a unified effort between people that are not directly affected by this, this is going to go on for a little while. Because if you're an American citizen and you're not directly affected by this, and depending on what side of the aisle you stand on with this debate, you may not necessarily go out there to protest. And until we have a unified effort, this is going to be chaos for quite some time unless, like I said, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, steps up, makes a very curated and detailed announcement or some type of message of peace and unity, and then an initiative to try to fix this. And like I said earlier, I'm not sure if that message that I saw from one of those major television networks was true in terms of him sending out an order to have ICE kind of pull back on the methods that they were using, going to hotels and restaurants and farms and these people's places of work, because they're clearly not getting it right. You're not going to be arresting anybody at a hotel or a restaurant or even a farm that's a farm worker by day and a drug dealer by night. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So those are some things that we got to fix. Those are things that we've got to look at, and we've got to take a unified approach. It all starts with the people that we've put in positions of power on Capitol Hill.
True, because
people have to listen to,
Yeah, let me jump in with that thought. Stephen Miller is the name of the guy, right? And I was watching, I think it was TYT, the Young Turks, the other day, and they were doing a deep dive into his background and spoke to some of the people that he used to go to school with. And they're saying that he is a bit of a racist, right? They're saying that he used to mock. This is what I'm not saying. I'm just saying what I heard, that he used to mock some of his classmates, right, because of where they're from. And now that he got the opportunity to head up a division, and the division that he's heading up, he's now sort of retaliating because they didn't let him get away with what he wanted to get away with when he was in school. And as a lot of us know, that sometimes some of these police officers that become bad actors in the police department make it bad for the good police officers. And a lot of the times, these are people that were bullied in school, so now they go out and they now bully people in society. So they're saying that potentially he is one of those type of individuals, and he's just retaliating. Not my words, I'm just regurgitating as best as I can based on what was said out in public already.
Well, and the thing about Stephen Miller is that if you know anything about his background, Stephen Miller grew up in a very conservative, home in a very I'm sorry, not conservative, but a very liberal Jewish household in California, which is where a lot of this is taking place right now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the epicenter of the immigration battle. Now, again, I can't speak on whether, what his views are and his character, whether he's racist or he's just prejudiced. That remains to be seen. Yeah, in his mind, he may be following an initiative and just doing his job. But nonetheless, the only thing that we can point back to is that he may not be the right fit for this role. He may not be the right fit for this position. As we all know, when Donald Trump came into office, he picked his cabinet and chose the people around him based on the opposition that he was facing. So anyone that appeased to him and gave him some level of credibility were the people that he leaned on heavily. Mm-hmm. So was Stephen Miller the right choice for his current role with the the Deputy Chief of Staff for Homeland Security? Again, right now, this moment in time would dictate for us to say probably not. But we don't know. The thing is that we really don't know. We know that Donald Trump is clearly not in control of this initiative, but we also don't know what directives Stephen Miller has been given. And in the short time frame, we're talking from January to June. So in the 5 months that all of this has taken place, with putting cabinet members in place and putting the right, deputy chiefs and all these people in different positions for this current administration, I'm not really sure that the president had enough time to properly vet these individuals other than the credentials that they had on paper. And as long as they were giving him the yes man treatment, those are the people that he put in place because he was trying to avoid any type of pushback from the people that he put in office. Because we've also seen a few people that he elected turn on him. Most recently, Elon Musk. Elon Musk pretty much has done a full 360 and turned on Donald Trump. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the background that we can't see, that we are not privy to the information. And so, I have to reserve my thoughts until, it all comes out. Really what's going on in the background. But we can't lose sight of the fact that clearly this initiative is not working. It's creating a hostile situation currently in California and soon to spread across the country. I'm starting to see some protests that are likely to take place in Florida. A lot of Cuban migrants are not happy with the promises that the president made, and these immigration policies are now starting to affect them. And I'm sure that's going to be the case across the country, especially in the most densely populated areas. That is a melting pot of immigrants who actually voted for Donald Trump and now realizing that what he says versus what's happening is two different stories. And so it's going to be a very interesting remainder of the year, and a very interesting remainder of this of his presidency. We're in for a long ride, and people are going to have to really be grounded. And at some point, I do believe that in order for us to overcome this as a country, we're going to have to find a way to unite. I'm not a big advocate of watching the news primarily, but even on Fox News, I've tuned in from time to time, and I've even noticed on Fox News that the way that they are reporting a lot of the things that are happening, they're not necessarily changing their tune, but they're changing their tone. And so that's a very big indication that even the people that supported Donald Trump getting into this office are starting to look at some of the things that he's doing or the initiative that he's put forward, and they're looking at it from a perspective with a much wider lens than they did by just trying to get him into office. And unfortunately, all he's doing is appeasing to his base.
True.
Everything that we're seeing right now is everything that Donald Trump said he would do. We just didn't know how it would have been implemented. And this current situation with the immigration status of these ICE raids and everything else to try to curb immigration is a prime example of all of these things. And so we're going to have to see this not just from this standpoint. We're going to have to endure this for a lot of the things that we're dealing in this country. You know, economically, if you go back and you look over the last 4 or 5 weeks, even the market suffered from announcements that Donald Trump made with the tariffs. And I'm not necessarily against tariffs. You know, I do believe that tariffs are necessary. I do believe that we have had prior administrations that have not looked at it from the same perspective as Donald Trump, being a businessman first. And I do think eventually, if we're able to do tariffs in a responsible way, it will level the playing field for America in terms of the tariffs that we pay on goods that are coming in and out of this country. But again, so far, his reputation is taking a dive. And they're doing a very good job of preserving his reputation, in my opinion, with the House Speaker and everybody else around him that controls his media access, because I do believe that his rating is a lot lower than what we currently know. You know, the numbers that we're seeing about his approval rating, I don't believe those numbers are accurate. I think that his public information officers and his Joint Chief of Staff and the people that he have around him currently have done a good job of downplaying how Americans truly feel about him. His base is always going to be his base, and so we can't really rely on those numbers, but there are a large number of people in this country, including African Americans, who voted for Donald Trump based on the plan that he had laid out. And unfortunately, up to this point, even though it's very early in his presidency, we're starting to see a lot of things unravel, and the way that he probably initially imagined things would go, they're not necessarily going in that direction right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of civil unrest, man. Too much civil unrest, and it's just scary. It's scary to see what's going on. You know, the other day when I was doing the show, the stream, I was a bit nervous. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something. Yesterday, I did a stream about what's going on overseas in the Middle East, right? And it was about an hour and 45 minutes. And I listened to the entire stream right after. All the audio was there. Did you know that they muted a lot of what I was saying? So it's just almost the beginning, parts of the middle, and the end. The other stuff I was saying in there, they muted it. Right? So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, obviously that's a part of some censorship and probably some guidelines by YouTube, because we are now also dealing with some censorship issues in this country that people are not aware of. A lot of content creators are basically reporting your experience with your most recent stream, because a lot of things change when you don't pay attention to those little check marks that you check off on, whether it's YouTube or any of the platforms that we utilize, and we think that we have free speech. The reality is you really don't. You don't have free speech when it comes to a platform that is privately owned and operated. And so I think censorship is going to play a big role into us moving away from a more democratic society, because the reality of it is that your voice can be heard, but only the things that they want people to hear. And so that's something else that's going to take place in this country over the next few years, that you're going to realize that you have a voice, but you can only say as much as the powers that be want to be out there, and that's going to be a form of control, because we do have, like I said, an issue in this country with division and with uncensored content, and with the advent of AI, which is why it's so dangerous. There's a lot of people out there that can't discern the difference or differentiate the difference between what's real and what's not. And so in order to control propaganda, you're going to realize that a lot of these streaming services, a lot of these platforms that allow you to speak freely, they're going to start putting some safeguards in place to prevent liability on their part by allowing you to say every and anything that you want to say in a free manner. And that's the reality of the society that we're pushing towards and moving towards. In 20 years, I'm not really sure what that looks like, but I can guarantee you with how what a pace like we talked about earlier with AI and technology is moving, I can foresee that a lot of the things that we've been able to see are going to be censored because we're at a place now. If you look around the world. There are a lot of places in the world where, or a lot of countries in the world where censorship is very heavy. We can go back to China. You know, we have very different versions of the tools that we utilize that we share. You know, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, when you look at the guidelines and the rules in different countries, there's a lot of censorship that takes place, whereas in the U.S. it's a free-for-all. And I think that's going to change because if you're fluent on some of these channels, whether it's X or Facebook or even Instagram, we're now moving into a phase, I know this doesn't apply to the topic, but when you go onto some of these social media platforms now, it's a porn site. There's free porn pretty much on all these sites because of the lack of censorship. And so all these things are going to combine and compile into a situation where there's going to have to be gatekeepers. There's going to have to be some censorship for the preservation of this country, for the rights that we uphold for our children and for their future. Because right now, as I can see it, looking at a lot of these platforms that are readily accessible with no age restrictions and no age limits, which is why TikTok was on the chopping block a few months ago, we're going to move it more progressively into a direction where a lot of the content that we utilize our right to free speech on, it's going to be censored. And so that's something that we need to gear up for as one of the many changes that are going to be happening in this country moving forward. So we're in a very, like I said, a very weird period of time in this country, and no one likes change. But change sometimes is necessary if applied in a responsible manner.
True.
And unfortunately, we're just going to have to see what that looks like, especially in a democratic society where everybody feels like their free rights and their civil liberties cannot be infringed upon when there are rules.
Let me jump in. I have two things to say to your last point. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. That's what a lot of people seem to misconstrued. They say we operate like a democracy, but we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, meaning that we elect the people, put them in power, and then they direct the way the country is supposed to operate. And then we have to follow, right? Well, it's supposed to be that we elect them, put them in power, and they work for us, but that's not how it is. So that's why we're a constitutional republic. And another point that you made, that you said that in terms of censorship, states are actually putting laws on the book that make sure that these platforms are putting certain guidelines in place, like age restriction, like for instance in Florida, it was put in place that a child can't have a social media account under the age of 15 years old, I believe, right? So if they have it under the age of 15, then the parents have to be the arbiter of that account. So other states are followed that same suit and make sure that they're putting certain things in place. And to another point you made, I think we're in a serious correction because back when the Democrats were in power, a lot of the platforms were given directives to make sure that they do ultra censoring. So that's why places like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, they were curving a lot of the things and shutting down accounts, just wiping them out after a content creator spend years working on millions of subscribers and just gone overnight because they say the slightest thing. So there's been a bit of an overcorrection. So that's why you're seeing so much explicit content online right now. But I do agree with you, that is going to change. And lastly, to my point, I don't know if you know about the conversation that Benjamin Franklin had with Elizabeth William Powell back when they constructed the Constitution. I don't know if you know about that. You know anything about that?
No, I'm not familiar with that subject matter.
I'm gonna read it to you, right? So Franklin and Elizabeth William Powell, after the constitutional conversation, Powell asked Franklin, well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy? To which he responded, we have a republic if we can keep it, right? So that goes to the point now of why you see that these protests are going on, the No Kings protests. That's what that has a reflection on, because of what Benjamin Franklin said to the Powells, right? So,
Okay.
and that clarifies the point I made with that we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic, and you can look more into that, right? But man,
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that point of view. You know, as someone living in this country, I do think that, especially with my time in law enforcement, one of the things I realized is that most Americans don't even know their constitutional rights. Most Americans don't know the first 10 amendments. And so we have to get to a place and a point in this country where everyone is not only engaged, but everyone is an active participant in making this country better. And unfortunately, the reality of it is that we're not currently living in a society where we are all aligned with the same goals and the same visions. We say the same things, that, you know, this country is what dreams are made of, and everybody comes here for this American dream. But unfortunately, we're no longer aligned with the Constitution's original intent, because there are so many different groups with different agendas that are trying to make their point and have their voice heard, that, like I said, we've lost the perception of civility to human beings. Right. So we've lost sight of that. It's very clear. You know, I remember I was in high school when the Columbine Domestic Terrorist Act took place. And it was such a very shocking thing. While it changed the way that we operate in schools and for the safety of kids in school, I remember having to do drills after that took place. We're now at a point in society where we are completely desensitized. And that's why it goes back to where I said there's going to have to be more censorship, which is going to feel like it's taking away some of our liberties. And the reason is because we're very desensitized. You know, we lead the world globally in mass shootings.
Yes, and
we
in high
you know,
schools,
but I remember a time where if there was one high school shooting, it was on the news for 30 days. Right? There was a shock value to it. When we moved from high school to middle school to even elementary school, going back to Sandy Hook, and it went from a shock value where, you know, we would be talking about it for months until we got down to the bottom of it, to now there may be a school shooting, you know, somewhere in the U.S. and it's not even aired nationally, because we become desensitized. And that goes back to our loss of civility. We're no longer a society of civilized individuals that care about our fellow Americans. The only time in this country we've ever been truly united was, you know, September 11th, 2001.
Right.
When 9/11 happened, this country was as unified as it's ever been in my lifetime. I remember it, you know, like it was yesterday. I remember where I was. I remember it clear as day. And I also remember where there was kind of like a them versus us mentality, so much so that Muslim Americans in this country suffered gravely for it. But then there was also, within that same period, where regular everyday Americans who, you know, were friends with Muslim Americans, or even family by marriage with Muslim Americans, that were standing up, and they were uniting as well, because we understood that the threat was foreign. But unfortunately, we now live in a society where most of our threats of terrorism, most of these acts are domestic. So again, it just goes back to the point that we have so many different issues and so many things going on, and everybody has a viewpoint, everybody has an opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone should have an opinion. But what we've lost sight of is that it's okay for someone to have an opinion that is not the same opinion as yours.
Yeah, if it's contrary,
correct.
It's a problem.
That's what makes us different. If everyone agreed on the same thing, we wouldn't have the country that we live in today. So we've got a lot of things that we've got to deal with in this country. I'm gonna go back now. I'm looking at this. In California, I think it's about 15 or 16 minutes past 8, or a little bit past that. So curfew is currently in effect. I'm still watching the stream that you had up earlier. I see people moving. It looks like they're moving at their own accord right now.
Right.
And hopefully they're able to end the night there in a civil manner where they feel like their voices have been heard by their ability to express and exercise their First Amendment rights. And I hope that's the case, because if it doesn't turn out that way tonight, moving forward, I think this is going to pour over into something even more, just even more atrocious. And we're going to start seeing the loss of life. We're going to put military personnel and law enforcement personnel who are really just out there trying to do their jobs and trying to adhere to the directives that they've been given. And once we lose sight of that, and we get to a place where we're at civil unrest, God help this country.
Yeah, even down here, yesterday there was a press conference where DeSantis and the chief of police said that if they do the parade and the protest and they block people's car, people have the rights to just run them over and nothing will come of it. If the people and the protesters spit at the police, they're going to beat them up and take them to the hospital and then take them to jail. Anything happen, they're going to do harm to the people. So they were talking. They were saying some things like no filter. The police were like, we are going to F you up if you do anything other than just having a peaceful protest and say, hey, we don't like this to happen. I'm just throwing that out there, but that's not exactly.
Yeah, I know you're paraphrasing.
Right. So the police are telling everybody down here in Florida, like, hey, if you do anything other than a quiet protest, we are going to mess you up. And if you hit one of the police officers, they're going to call the family and tell them whether they can pick. He said that they're going to kill you graveyard dead, and call the family and tell them where they can pick up your remains.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off. I saw that. I saw that press conference, and that's just yet another example of a deputy sheriff. I don't remember if that was in Brevard County.
County.
It was it may have been Brevard County. One of those deputy chiefs or sheriffs in one of the more conservative counties. And again, that's the wrong message to send. But I understand the sense of urgency and the heightened sense of the need to try to be proactive in sending a clear message as to what the tolerance will be for bad behavior.
Right.
Unfortunately, that message gets misconstrued, and the way that the message is delivered is the reason for that. I don't think that individual particularly should be in his position. I think that everyone has someone that they have to answer to, and specifically in Brevard County, I'm sure they have county commissioners or a governing body that needs to really reevaluate those types of statements, because again, those statements are really not necessary. I understand the heightened sense of again, the state of what's going on, but you can't fight fire with fire, and so everyone doesn't have the ability to deliver the message in a way to unite people, and that was a classic case of that. I don't believe and hold the office, all of the law enforcement professionals in Brevard County to the standard that he set, but I look at that more as someone looking to make a name for themselves, much like Grady Judd, and put themselves in the public spotlight given the situation at hand. And unfortunately, you're always going to have opportunists, no matter the profession, no matter the job description, and that was a classic case of that. So I hope it doesn't get to that place, but just given the tone of that message, again, I think that was brought on by President Donald Trump's, statements a few weeks back about his preservation of law enforcement. And I think this particular sheriff took it a step further than it needed to be. And I think wholeheartedly he will pay for those statements. We might not see it unfold in the public eye, But just like we're having this conversation, I'm pretty sure there are city leaders and county leaders that took offense to those statements, and I'm sure and I hope that they handle that situation the way they should, because we don't need leaders out there commanding an entire law enforcement committee or community
with that mindset.
With his mindset. So again, it's just one of those things that we have to deal with in society, where we have to keep our leaders accountable. We have to hold them accountable, and hopefully they do that down in Brevard. So
I have something to add to that point. Sometimes I do understand why they were being preemptive, right? But even in that message, they don't understand, and there are some people they're not scared of death, and they will push the envelope. And if the police decide to pull the gun and kill somebody in the crowd or whatever, I think at that point things will escalate, and there are a lot more civilians than law enforcement. And even though law enforcement may have the guns and they have protective measures in place, certain people, we're in a nation where, let's face it, there are more guns in this nation than people. And some people have 2, 3 of them. And if something like that went down, it might set a precedent, and that will be in turmoil in this country. And going back to my point, civil unrest, tensions, civil war. And I don't want that to happen, and I pray, to the creators that does not happen. But if it does, wow, we're in.
Well,
go ahead.
No, well, I'm on the same sentiment as you. I would pray and hope that we don't get to that point. Like I said, I think tensions are just high right now. The one thing about this country is that the U.S. has always been resilient, and we've always been able to overcome, a lot of things, that a lot of other countries typically just go directly into that type of mode of it's war and it's just civil unrest. I think we have, even though we've lost a sense of civility, I think we do have enough civil people in this country in leadership roles that would prevent it from getting to that place, and that's the hope. I pray and hope that we have more people that utilize common sense, logic, and the powers that have been bestowed upon them to make the right decisions to prevent things like that from happening and getting out of hand. But I do know, again, just going back to holding people accountable, this is we're at a crucial point in this country, and a crucial time where, just being the president of this country is no longer a title. You are now going to have to put on your best face moving forward to help this country move through this and navigate through this in a responsible manner that doesn't disrupt everyday life for everyone. Like I said, what we're witnessing right now with the protests is really not a unified effort as Americans. It's a unified effort with migrants and immigrants in this country and the families of those individuals that are currently being affected by the immigration laws and the statuses. So hopefully it doesn't get to a place where now individuals like myself and you become involved or so heavily involved in these disputes that it spills over into that. But you're 100% right. It has the ability to get there, but we've always been able to overcome these things as a country, and hopefully, President Donald Trump finds a way, even though his delivery is not always the best, hopefully he finds a way to, continue to stay on task with his initiative, make some adjustments, identify some inefficiencies, and do the right thing. And right now, that just remains to be unseen. So we've like I said, we've got a little road ahead of us. I appreciate you for having me on. I'm always, always ready to jump on and have a conversation with you and the audience to share my viewpoint, just given my background, my experiences in the different areas that I've been, I've been able to be a part of in my short life on this planet. But I'm always available to share my point of view. always, here for the show. And if you ever need me, I'm available. Just give me a call because, as you know me personally, I have a perspective on a wide array of subject matter topics. So
yeah, just jump over to another broadcaster because they have the curfew's out and they're saying it's unlawful assembly now. So they're trying to get these people out of the center of downtown. But to the point, before you say anything, to the point that you just made, you know what I want, where I want you, I prefer for you to be.
Absolutely. And I think there'll be some collaborative effort between us moving forward in the future. Back to those protesters really quickly. I hope that they have some leadership within those groups that can advise them that although they have the First Amendment right to protest, you cannot violate that curfew. And so this is where now all the turmoil starts. The turmoil starts when you have emotions and aggression who no longer want to abide by the rules and participating in exercising their First Amendment rights, and now they're breaking the laws and they're breaking rules, and people are going to go out and protest. I encourage them to do it in a responsible manner, follow the rules, exercise your rights, have your voice heard, but don't create a situation for yourself where you end up in jail or injured or worse because of an emotional attachment to something that you feel dearly and greatly about, because there's always tomorrow. There's another protest that will take place tomorrow, and probably for the remainder of this situation until we have an outcome that's suitable for the people that are most affected. So that's my last thought on the protest. My
Thank
hearts
you,
go out
man.
to them. Prayers go out to them, man. I understand what they're going through, and I hope we can get to a point in this country where we can overcome these things, and all the initiatives on the table are more accurately responded to, and we can continue to make this country the great place that we love it to be. We can all live here harmoniously together, and we can all still achieve that dream of the American dream,
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling in, man. I appreciate you. And I'd love for you to jump on the next one. I'm going to see if anybody else wants to call in, right? Put the number back up. Right. Let's see if anybody else wants to call in. Thank you. We'll talk again. Touch bases with you.
I'll stay tuned and I'll be available.
All right, cool.
What are we witnessing?
All right. Did you give it a like the stream?
I did. I gave. Of course I did. Of course there was a like and a share.
I appreciate you.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the good fight. And one day when we're on here with thousands of viewers, it'll all pay off.
At the same time, simultaneously, I would love to have like 1,000 to 3,000 people on, but I need my wingman with me, and he's not here, but he knows who he is. I'm not gonna call any name. I'm just gonna say he knows it. Maybe you can pass the word on.
I'll pass the word on. You're doing a great job. I love watching the podcast. I love the streams. I love the point of views, and I love the subject matters that you tackle that a lot of people are not necessarily willing to put their face and their name to. So I love it. I appreciate it, and I think, like I said, eventually more like-minded people who understand your objective in order to bring true, uncensored clarity and conversations to the table that sometimes are uncomfortable but necessary.
Imagine if we had
they're interested in being proactive now.
All right, buddy. I'll let you carry on. If anybody else has a thought that they want to put on and they're ready to talk.
All right. Take care. Thank you, man.
So